Do you remember that multiplayer mode that Assassin's Creed used to have way back in the day? Now mix that in with a little bit of Hunt Showdown and you kind of get the idea about what Hood, Outlaws and Legends is. With a team of 4 versus another team of 4 and plenty of NPC enemies, including a pretty badass sheriff. Not a single man in tights, I absolutely promise. My name is Jade, let's go through what I think about this game a few days after it's launched. So a brief summary once more. 4 players, 4 different classes at the moment with plans to add another in the future. Each class has its own distinct abilities that will weigh up and weigh positive or negative against other players and what kind of objective you're playing on the map. Hood, here he is, Mr. Old Robin, he is your ranger class. Bow shots from afar and a nasty explosive arrow that does a lot of damage to an area. Marion is the classic assassin's class. She can go invisible with her special ability and she's got a pretty nice little one-handed little semi-mini bowgun. Rapid shots firing up when you charge it can also do a lot of damage and she can still do a bit of melee action too. John is the brawler, he is the melee guy, he's also the strongest of the pack of course, and that means he's going to be the best player to carry the big huge chest of gold that you need to get off the map as soon as possible. With a special rage induced meter taking less damage and doing more when he outputs it, huge swings of his massive hammer, that is the go-to guy for getting into trouble. And then Friar Tuck, not Tuck, he is your mystic, otherwise maybe known as the healer. That's his special, he can heal anyone within his group. And while a bit slower to use, he's got a pretty hefty ball and chain kind of combo attack too. I really like the characters, I really like the classes, I just wish there was more of them. We'll get into that in a little bit of detail, but let's focus on the positives. You've got some really nice character designs here. It looks great and overall the whole game is fantastic. Not an exaggeration to say that some parts of the world and the environment would give Assassin's Creed Valhalla a run for its money in terms of looks and visuals. Even the starting area has got more atmosphere and more details than I've seen in a bunch of open world games over the years. So they've done fantastic work, Sumo Digital, the developers of this game over the last couple of years since it first got revealed, and I think there is real promise here. Now the characters, as I said, they don't really have much in terms of where you can supplement them or do different things. You're not going to be equipping any different weapons. Robin will always have a bow, Marion will always have the one-handed little mini crossbow, and John's always going to have the hammer. This is good, but also this is bad for long-term players of the game. At the start, it makes everything feel pretty fair. Unless you're putting loads and loads of hours into this, there's still a chance that a fairly new team who've done a couple matches can win out against a much bigger, better team. It's all just about learning the maps, and I would say that's pretty conducive to any PvP game, whether it's Call of Duty, whether or not it's Apex Legends. Getting to know where all the maps are, relying on good communication with your team, you can have a chance against more experienced players. What Hood does very well is it doesn't really give the players any real big huge unique weapons or items that they can only get by putting hundreds of hours in a game and then steamrolling the noobs. Every weapon you're seeing right now is all completely cosmetic. There is no actual gains in terms of perks, buffs or debuffs. I'm pretty sure my Ratbag crew are going to disagree with me here, but they were kind of complaining that they were getting steamrolled and it was very hard to go up against players with higher levels. But that's kind of the point. You are going to come across players that have just no-lifed it in even the first 2 days of playing. What was fair was that they didn't do it by having just a huge set of weapons that we weren't having access to. Now that's not to say there aren't any unlocks that you can gain. Hood relies on 2 methods of leveling up. You level up your character that you use and play with, and then you level up your overall hideout. With the hideout unlocks really unlocking mostly just skins and obviously your character unlocking perks. And this is definitely where you can maybe start getting an edge if you have put more time into it and you're pretty good at getting your character leveled up. There's 3 slots for perks that you have to upgrade, and there are various different levels like 2, 4, 6, 10, etc. All each have their own unique properties, and some can sound quite pretty, OP, others maybe not less so. But in about 10 matches, I really didn't come across a bunch of players that I felt like they were just absolutely spamming or had a huge advantage because of some of these perks. Some of them relate directly to combat, others will be about getting the loot off the map or not being alerted or seen by guards as much. So yes, naturally, if you put loads of time into this game, you will get some extra benefits with the perks, but I've definitely played a lot of other games where it really feels like getting to that weapon stage and unlocking some badass new feature will really give you the upper hand against brand new players or even moderately new players. So good job with that. Unfortunately for the long-term health of the game, I can see a lot of people getting quite fed up and bored of this. When you think about games like Overwatch, there's usually a huge roster of characters that if you do get a bit stale using the same one, you can flip and flop to the others, learn their unique abilities and really find a groove with all of them. But there's literally only 4 character classes here and there's no real differences in any of them. In fact, it might be a good idea to offer a chance to at least equip some sort of variation on their main weapon. It could still be a bow, but maybe it's going to be a short range, a long range, you know, that kind of idea, and have that ready to go for anyone that joins the game at level 1. I also think when players are looking at games that we play like live service and PvP games, no one is going out there and repping and going, oh, do you see this sick perk I've got? It's amazing. No, instead they're going, oh, look at this badass ball and chain I got with this huge skull on it. Players like to get new gear, they like to get new weapons and armor pieces, not so much just getting some new perks. Now there is lots of cosmetics in the game, but they don't really offer any benefit. So apart from the bragging rights of looking a little bit more fantastic, I wouldn't say it's going to have much of a draw for players long term. So it is a bit of a conundrum. Keep things as fair as you can by making the classes all pretty uniformed and no real access to huge differences in terms of gear, or make it a little bit more desirable to keep playing through the game, get these gear, and I guess still have the advantage because maybe you should have when you've put so many hours into something. It's a hard one. Now Hood, Outlaws and Legends comes with a pretty distinct battle passes on top of its actual price, and we're going to get to that towards the end. I haven't actually seen the unlocks yet, so I don't think they've actually gone live with the Season 1 pass yet, but they've got a season or battle pass for each of their seasons, and they've got 3 seasons planned in the first year. You can buy a special edition that has access to all of these for an extra sort of 20 quid, $20. The characters are all well designed, and apart from maybe a little bit reliance on Took that I've seen in the matches I've played, I don't really feel like too many of them are too unbalanced. At first I was starting to think that Hood himself and Marion were definitely at a disadvantage, as it definitely favoured melee, but once you start playing with them a little bit more and get a bit more experience, you realise the pros and cons of each character really complement each other. Hood and Marion can shoot down rope ladders. John's the only one that can pull up portcullises. Just make sure you've got your actual friends and teammates all clear. You get the idea, there's lots of pros and cons with them, and I guess I've started with this because it's so important to the game. You're going to be spending a lot of time with these characters, so focusing on whether or not they're fun to play with, whether or not they're balanced is super important. Me and my crew played about 10 matches, we played some PVE just to get used to some of the maps, and obviously we played some live games. And yeah, we didn't win a single one, but we did have a good time. Definitely had some frustrating moments with each other and the enemy team steamrolling us, but I still felt everything was winnable. Despite us being really super flaky in our first match, we still managed to kind of bring it home, even with just 3 of us versus 4 as someone dropped out. And that is definitely what this game does really well, is setting the stages and dividing them up and really giving you a chance to come back. On top of the stages that you'll go through and getting the key, getting the vault and then extracting it, you've also got different points that you can go and capture, and these will be your respawn points, and the enemy team only has to recapture it and then it becomes their respawn, and this can really help turn the tide of the battle. And there's so many different ways to go and so many different avenues that you could take, with some characters obviously having much better ways to get through than others. The first stage is obviously not getting seen as much, otherwise you have areas that go into lockdown, so there end up being more guards, and then obviously finding the sheriff and his key. And his patrols are different every match that you play. The spawn points for these are great, and even when you get to finding the treasure chest, they're always in a different spot as well, in random different areas. The maps are pretty large, as I said, they're gorgeous, I think they're stunning, and they definitely offer on par what you've seen in Assassin's Creed Valhalla in terms of environments and cities and towns. But here you can see Marion, Mayhem here, grabbing the key from the sheriff, and that's what you've got to do every time. Now the sheriff can't actually be killed, you can reduce his health a little bit or stun him with certain grenades, and then that will give you a chance to get away. He's pretty much Mr. X from Resident Evil, almost unstoppable. These first moments when you start to infiltrate the castle with your crew, lining up who's going to take what shot on what enemy to hopefully get past without sounding the alarm, is pretty fantastic. These moments don't last long though, as it quickly devolves into a run here and try and just avoid any of the enemies and outrun them. And it can be a bit frustrating that you've lined up something perfect and you've still managed to set off an alarm, because the alarm time is so short. Literally you only have to be in line sight for a few seconds, and somehow these guards have got magical Wi-Fi pages that they can give to all and sundry that there is enemy or intruders in the forts. That said, you can still win out, you're not ultra punished for it. You'll take a blicking for sure, you'll definitely need the Took to help you with his healing class if you want to make sure you get through unscathed for the rest of this part. But yeah, it still offers a little bit of frustration that they are so quick to see you and raise wired alarms. Thank God though, it doesn't go across the whole map, as I said, only in the sections that you're in. So as long as you escape that area and move to a new one, you should hopefully be able to start going back into stealth mode. Once you get the key, or take it from the enemy team if they manage to get it first, it will then give you a location exactly where it is in what part of the map, and this can change and rotate, and thank the Lord, because it would get really dry really quick if you was always going to the same doorway, and this does stop that element of other teams just camping a certain spot. They won't know where you are unless you've been alert in places, so at the moment the church is high alert, the other team will know that there is something going on here. It's why it's crucial that when you're working for your team, then you do try your best to be stealthy and actually play the game as intended. There's plenty of voice chat options, so even if playing randoms, while can still be frustrating, simple answer is to get some friends or make some that you can rely on to do what you want to do or have a proper plan. Once you've found the door where it's going to be, the vault, then normally you have to take out some sort of elite enemy outside, but this can be done by hopefully using a bunch of your specials and of course any explosives you found. Gear isn't something that you start off with, each character has his own unique, so I've got this one here that pretty much stops enemies from doing anything, but it does take away your stamina. Other characters have flashbangs or smoke grenades. You can only carry one of these and you'll find them in boxes scattered all around the map. I feel like this is a concession that they could maybe start giving to players to start off with. Some new items and gear to start the game with, and then add that little bit of variety where you can choose what kind of additional item or gear you have. But we've finally got the chest, and as I said, some characters are better at carrying it. I do believe John carries the chest quicker as he's a much larger fellow. And there's perks that will help with this as well, that reduce the gold every time you put it down. You're not completely defenseless, you can put the chest down and then fight whoever's near you, or maybe try it and get away from the sheriff before he grabs hold. This is pretty exhilarating, trying to find the location where you're going to go, different exit points to the map, freshen things up. Some will be under lockdown depending on where or what trouble you've caused elsewhere, and yeah, it's really a case of taking view of your surroundings and making them decisions together that you don't absolutely get wrecked. Hood does come, as I mentioned, with a PVE mode where you can play it with your friends, just running around the maps against the computer controlled enemies just to get experience with the game, so you're not feeling that pressure going up against other players. And I think definitely their plans for this going forward sound pretty exciting and promising. They're going to add new features to this and flesh it out even more for players that really want to just hang out with their friends and go against the system rather than other players more experienced than them. I think it will be a good few weeks before people really start maybe getting pretty bored with the matches they're going through and cycling through these different maps. Like I said, it really spices things up, having different points that you're going to go, finding the sheriff in different locations and a treasure always being in a different location. There's currently only 5 maps. I do believe they're going to be adding another one in the near future as well, and all that content will be free. The only thing that's coming as paid is of course all the cosmetic stuff that you get in the battle passes. It feels like this game is maybe just a little wee bit too early still. It's polished enough. I didn't really have any problems with the mechanics of it. Sure, there was some moments where I was hitting enemies and it definitely felt like I was at least 2 foot away from them and I still managed to do some damage. And equally, the chaos of when you're attacked by a bunch of enemies can sometimes seem a bit madcap and not really much thought has gone into it properly. But again, that's just the way players will play. There is parry moves, there is defense moves in this game, and I think players that master that will have a much better time. But with maybe not enough maps and maybe not enough variety in some of the gear or different classes, or even just having some items on them, I do think that people are going to get maybe a little bit bored of this game relatively soon. I still think it's a purchase for me. I've enjoyed it playing with the friends. I don't think it's that unfair. I definitely feel there's lots of balancing to be done, but I wouldn't say it's a mess. I think it's actually a pretty decent look. Yes, the game's price is maybe still just a little bit over the top for me. I think that it's important to talk about value and what you get, and it definitely feels like this game was maybe considered to be a free-to-play game, judging by how much focus was on them battle passes and how much you can see the unlocks are pretty slow. And I'm pretty sure that maybe in the future we may see this game end up going that way. Although Hunt Showdown has resisted that so far and it's still managed to sell a good couple million copies, I do believe. I don't think every PvP game or any kind of game like that always has to be free to play, but definitely when you're inputting lots of cosmetics and battle passes and stuff, I don't see nothing wrong in making the initial price as cheap as it can be. This game is like £25 on console, it's actually cheaper than it is on PC at like 27, and yeah, I would say it's just about okay. As an old gamer that remembers the times where I couldn't afford more than one game a month, if I was lucky, when I was working like minimum wage, it matters value to me in gaming, and now I can buy pretty much whatever games I want whenever I feel like it. I still do really focus on that for most people, and in a year of a pandemic I really feel like they should have just gone with it and made this game free to play or slapped early access on it and called it a tenner. I don't necessarily think there's enough here to warrant that kind of money on it, plus the additional battle passes just to earn some cosmetics. Not every game's going to be a runaway success like Valheim, but it's true, price your game correctly, price it right and get more people involved. You've definitely got a greater chance of them sticking by and adding and buying some of them cosmetic skins or season passes. Now, separating that decisions which are made by the publisher focus away from developers, which you kind of always have to do a little bit, and I think this game is pretty good. I do like it, I've enjoyed my time, and I definitely think for me it was worth it hanging out with my friends, having a new fresh experience. Hopefully this new content won't be necessarily too long, and hopefully they can find a way to add even more characters. As I said, they've got plans to add one more legendary class. I think they could do with another 4. Even if they only really slightly been variations on what we've already got, with maybe just a difference in weapons or starting gear, I would definitely go down for that. Maybe having a dark Robin. This game is kind of set in a supernatural setting of Robin Hood, not rather than going trying to be historical on the myth. But with such limits on the actual moves your characters are making, it's all just literally one button, or at least get used to the parry system for a little bit of mastery. I do think players are going to get a little bit fed up very early. As you would expect, there is a little bit of issues with the launch 3 days, and they did do a soft launch giving early access to everyone that pre-ordered the game or just decided to go ahead and buy it right now, and you get ahead 3 days early access as well as some skins. And hats off to the devs for making this completely cross-play. Well, in a way, you basically won't have trouble ever finding a match. You'll always get a pool of players because it's Xbox, PlayStation and PC, and you'll always find players. However, you can't actually make up a team of players from different platforms. So you're on PlayStation, your buddy's on Xbox, you can't join up in a team, you can only find opposition on different platforms. Crossplay is not a deal breaker for me. I think we're at this stage now where it is expected with a lot of games, but it's still pretty a technical achievement or just setting up all the accounts. And the devs haven't ruled it out in the future, but it isn't something they're going to be working on just yet. This isn't a mess of a game like we've seen with so many over the last couple of years. This is a solid start, a solid foundation. The character designs, the look, the fairly simple combat and way to get into the game, I'm definitely all for, and kudos to them for getting it quite polished in my opinion. Sure, there's some bullshittery sometimes with enemies attacking you, like I said, hitting them from different ranges and stuff, but I don't think that won't be ironed out very soon. And I do believe they'll come good with some of the things they're going to be adding. I just hope they take note of not maybe just me but others and really ramp up their plans for maybe more characters and also introduce some more maps or different ways to play. And that is again is another focus. They are going to be adding new game modes because at the moment the heist mode is literally it. I would love to see some extra challenges pop up that you can choose. There are some sort of small little daily challenges that you get, but things that maybe you can buy and use your gold for instead of just being on uploading or getting some cosmetics. I think things like wagers would be great between you and your teammates, who can get the most silent kills, who can pick up the chest the most, and you could even have a little bit of trolling amongst yourselves as well as obviously try and deal with the enemy team. Now we did get steamrolled, as I said, we didn't manage to win one match, getting to this endpoint and trying to get the treasure off the map. It's really exhilarating, it's fun, but it is pretty chaotic. Another plus point for me with this is that you do gain something out of it. While you might not win, you do get a chance to capture some XP and you will get some rewards for being the first to unlock the chest or get the vault open and then deliver it. And I think this is why I like this game because, as I said, you can turn the tide at any moment. Even against a team much better than you, you've always got nearly that chance of winning it. Or not, as you've just seen. If you regularly play with your friends pretty much day in day out on the same sort of games, then absolutely I think this is worth a purchase to have some fun for the next 3 weeks, maybe that long. However, as I said, you're going to have to just wait for more content to come in because I do reckon you'll probably get a little bit bored of the stuff that's already there. For relatively new players to games like these, or solo players, yeah, you'll still definitely have some fun, but absolutely try and get a crew around you. You'll definitely have a lot more fun coordinating stuff properly and trying to play the game as is intended. There is an element of rush the objective at the end and just go all in without much strategy, and definitely I reckon some of the classes, although not overly OP, they could probably do with tinkering a little bit. And who knows, you may really enjoy just playing against the computer on your own, trying to see if you can do it all pretty much. But yeah, it's definitely more of just a training sort of exercise at the moment, rather than a fully fleshed game mode. Buy this game on that promise. You'll have fun, but expect to have more fun in the coming months, hopefully when you revisit with your pals, but you won't be playing this day in day out for the next 2 or 3 months. It may be worth seeing if it does end up going free to play, but I certainly probably wouldn't bother buying the cosmetic packs unless you really have got a bunch of money and you love to look a pretty bling. I definitely would like to see them shift a little bit of focus on giving us a little bit more options and choices in our character presets. If they can work out a way to make it not too unbalanced in doing so and keeping it fair for relatively newer or less experienced players, I think they've got a real winner here. I'm excited to see what they can offer in the future. I did play some of this in the technical beta, although not loads, and a little bit of the beta before. That's why I've been able to give you these impressions pretty quick. But of course, if my mind changes once I've sunk some more hours into it, I will absolutely do a full review. But I think this is pretty conducive. As a first impressions, I don't really feel like I'm going to have to revisit this. I think everything I've said is pretty much going to spawn out in the next couple of weeks. But like I said, if I find anything really super positive or negative, you'll see it in the streams and the gameplay videos that I'm going to be doing. Hood, Outlaws and Legends, available now on all platforms, Xbox, PlayStation 5, Series SX, PC, Steam and Epic Games Store. A buy from me with the promise that it will be a little bit of a slow burn getting some of this new content, but I do think these devs will come good. Until next time, Ratbags, either agree, disagree me, put it in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next time.